He's been involved in many community organizations, having served as the foundation chair of Florida International University, a member of that university's Dean Council, and the College of Administration's Principal Advisory Board. Since 2006, he has served as director of Auto Nation, the largest auto retailer in the U.S. He currently serves on the board of the Downtown Charter School in Miami and Jazz at Lincoln Center in New York. Carlos has an undergraduate degree in finance and a master of business administration in finance from Florida International. And so it is our pleasure to introduce to you the President and CEO of Jackson Health System, Carlos Migoya. Carlos?
Good morning. How's everybody doing? Thank you all for being here today. It's great to have a short break from the craziness that we have and see some of the old friends that I had from the old business side that are still around, which is great to see what Miami community continues to be like, and that's part of the reason why we're all excited to be in Miami, to be truthful with you. I especially want to thank Frank and Alan Becker for hosting this event. When I took this job last spring, one of the first things we did was rejoin the Beacon Council. And frankly, I guess I'm old enough, we were one of the founding organizations under Southeast Bank of the Beacon Council way back when this was done when you were still in Jacksonville, I guess, Frank, or even before that. So I'm obviously very attuned to what the Beacon Council does and continues to do, and very much embrace everything that this organization does. Whether you look at our founding parents, like Henry Flagler or Julia Turner, for the more recent history with great people like Alva Chapman, the business leadership of Miami-Dade County has always been committed to building this community. At times have meant that are you building this community, and the people in this room are among those who have worked together to do it. We did it after Hurricane Andrew. We did it after September 11th. And we're doing it now in the aftermath of the Great Recession. But let me tell you about another time that we did it. And those of you who have been around for a while will remember it well. Back in the early 1980s, when the growth of our city was only matched by the growth of our crime, the old Jackson Memorial Hospital emergency room was overwhelmed. Being a community of entrepreneurs, we turned to the market. 7 additional hospitals opened trauma centers in what was envisioned as a grand network that would serve every corner of our county. Within a year, that trauma center system collapsed. Trauma is hard to launch, expensive to maintain, and difficult to manage. It simply was not profitable. Those 7 hospitals did what sensible business would do. They cut their losses and shut down the trauma units. The entire burden fell back on Jackson and its taxpayer owners. And this time, we solved it the right way. We brought the medical experts, the elected officials, and the private sector leaders in the same table. And I say we because I was one of those private sector people. And we built our vision of the world's most sophisticated center for trauma medicine. For almost 20 years, it was the sole trauma center in Miami-Dade, and it earned the reputation around the world. Maybe you or someone you love has been treated at Ryder. If so, you've experienced what it means to have so many of the county's top doctors under a single roof. When you come to Ryder, they're waiting for you. Not just experts in trauma. They're experts in trauma orthopedics, experts in trauma neurosurgery, you name it. Unlike level 2 trauma centers, we don't have a general cardiologist on call who may show up a half hour later, which is all that's required under a level 2. We have the real experts on site, around the clock, 24/7. That is why the U.S. Army has chosen Jackson as the only place to train their combat surgeons for treating battlefield injuries. That is why Ryder's doctors use telemedicine to participate in surgeries in Haiti, Iraq, and Afghanistan, which are constantly monitored by our site every day. That is why so many researchers choose Ryder for cutting-edge projects. I'll forgive you if you think that this next statement sounds like Chicken Little, but I assure you it's absolutely true. Everything we have built at Ryder over the last 20 years is now at risk. It's not hard to imagine a situation just a few years from now when my board and I will have to have a tough conversation about whether to let Ryder die or let it drag the entire Jackson system. What happened? We forgot to learn from our mistakes. Late last year, one of our private competitors, again decided to come looking for profits in trauma. They opened a trauma center in Kendall with far fewer specialists, far less experience, and yes, less of everything else except for one thing: insured patients. State law requires paramedics that the location that they take their patients to is in the closest vicinity from a geographic standpoint. And these folks are betting heavily that their location means that they'll get the well-insured car accidents and leave Jackson with the unfunded shootings and stabbings. We simply cannot afford to lose a long war of attrition in our balance sheet. Early estimates suggest we'll lose millions of dollars per month in trauma, maybe more. Shutting down Ryder would be a terrible tragedy, but we will quickly run out of options if our revenue stream goes dry. I spent more than 40 years in banking, and everyone here knows that I'm very much in favor of making money. I'm going to tell you in a minute about what we're going to do about starting to get Jackson going, but I certainly don't have a problem with competition either, by the way. And I definitely see some pineapple fellows in the crowd, and I've told people all over this community that hospitals like theirs will push us to be better than we are today and to get to that excellent level. But I honestly believe that trauma service is too important to leave the whims of the marketplace. If private competitors grab the funded patients and leave Ryder to wither, what's going to happen in a year or 3 when they again close their doors? The floodwaters will come rushing back to Jackson. And we learned in New Orleans that neglected levees do not hold. Yesterday we took an important step. Jackson's board asked the County Commission for permission to expand Ryder to operate trauma centers both in Jackson North, which is on the Golden Glaze Interchange, and Jackson South, down on 152nd Street and US 1. It's not an ideal solution. Rather than growing market share, it would just limit how much would bleed away. Dollars that could be spent on programs and services on the main campus would have to be split among 3 sites. But if you take a look at our missions, it's exactly the right response to this situation. Patients at North and South would have instant access to the experience and intervention of our in-house experts. We'd be able to preserve much of our volume, which means preserving our status as a research and development center. This is all a long way from being a done deal, but I wanted you all to hear about it while we're going down this road. We're starting to do a better job at getting our message out. It's a huge community to reach on a shoestring budget, and we need your help. But I'm not going to tell you exactly how until the end of this. First, I need to make you a promise. Jackson is changing. For the last 15 or 20 years, as healthcare has changed radically, Jackson stood still. Everyone else was reacting to changing market forces, changing technology. We've got some ambitious service plans on top of that. Plans to renovate our labor rooms for the first time in 30 to 40 years. We'll want to start having their babies at Jackson again. Plans to update our rehab hospital, which is a national leader in care, but it looks like a World War II bunker. Plans to offer expanded and improved services at Jackson North and South because people want their health care where they live. It's going to be an incredibly exciting time for us over the next few years. Now, getting there is not going to be easy. The cost of doing business at Jackson has been wildly out of control for years. The only real critical hire I have made right out of the gate, besides Zara, is another Don Steigman, our Chief Operating Officer, who was our tenant healthcare top executive in Florida. He's run hospitals all over our community, taking ones that were really in dire straits and bringing them to success. Don's #1 watchword is accountability, which basically was never in Jackson's dictionary. We have a new Chief Administrative Officers at most of our campuses reporting directly to Don, and most of them live with some healthy fear of their monthly operating reviews. As a result, we've cut managed overtime to less than 1% in an industry where 2 to 3% is considered best practice. We've just completed a new 3-year contract with the nurses union that eliminate all guaranteed raises, have employees mirroring the state pension, and contributed to their own retirement for the first time. We're also completing a month-long review department by department, looking at our staffing levels, our patient volumes, and our strategic goals. We will right-size our staff in order to get competitive. By the time May 1st comes around, will be my anniversary at Jackson, we will have reduced 23% of operating expenses of a hospital. That is $500 million a year. Part of the reason we need to do it is because of our short-term success. We're getting people discharged from the hospital almost a full day earlier than we used to. And we're doing a much better job of treating people during short observations, staying instead of fully admitting them to the hospital. That's great news in the long term. Those are statistics that the government and private insurers look at, and it's going to help us capture more funding and more business over the coming years. But the only way those kinds of efficiencies make you more competitive is by making commensurate reductions to staff. If your hotel still gets 100,000 guests a year, but they're only staying 2 nights instead of 5, you can bet you're going to need a lot less staff, even if you maintain the same service standards. That's critical, by the way. We're deadly serious about reducing costs without compromising healthcare, safety, or customer service. In fact, we put almost every employee of the system through customer service training over the last quarter of 2011, and the results are starting to show. Remember, I told you a few minutes ago that only 1/3 of our patients would recommend us. We've basically doubled that over the last year. That's great, of course, but it doesn't even really get us to the starting line. Those folks with the pineapples get about 80%. And if we're going to give them a run for their money, we need to get our numbers up to 85 or better. You also may have heard that we dramatically scaled back in our in-health insurance company, the JMH Health Plan. When we came in, the plan was covering Medicaid patients, Medicare members, and all of our employees. It was bleeding, as I mentioned, to the tune of $30 million a year last year, because it had the wrong mix of folks. Unlike Medicare, Medicaid does not pay for complicated procedures. Whether you're getting a gallbladder removed or a new kidney transplant, Medicaid pays the same flat rate. But the people who were attracted to the Jackson name were those with the most serious conditions. We were losing our shirts on them, actually. When the plan then picked up all our Jackson's employees, it gained more than 10,000 people who are intensely familiar with healthcare and therefore use it at a much higher rate than the average person. So in January 1, we moved our employees back to AvMed, had the state of Florida sign our Medicaid members to other insurance providers, and decided to focus on our Medicare business. The result? The plan has been profitable for 5 straight months now. It's not a printing press for money, but it's chugging along well enough that we can take our time and determine what strategy is going to be best for the overall long haul. Look, I could talk on about this stuff all day long. The good news about this job was that when we found plenty of things every day to go about fixing. By this summer, we should have a robust new strategic plan, a brand image, a marketing campaign, a very different vibe in our facilities, and more importantly, a break-even to profitable nature. We're working towards making the campus cleaner and easier to navigate, and the days of nightmarish billing are really come to an end. I definitely want to take some questions to get everyone out of here, but first, I said we need your help on something. Every one of you is very influential in this town. For those of you that I know, that's terrifying, but I'm sure the rest of you are okay. But people listen to what you say and they put a lot of stock in it. I'm not asking you to be our cheerleaders or our salesmen, but I'm asking you to give us another look. Don't feed that old too poor or too sick reputation. Give us a chance to prove that Jackson deserves to be the provider of choice. You support us every day when you pay your sales tax. Let us see if there are ways that we can partner with you. Provide services for your employees or your family. Give us a try yourself. If we don't measure up, tell us what we need to do better. But if we really do it well, tell the story. It seems like everyone in this town has a Jackson story. They cured my aunt's cancer, they saved my wife's car accident. My story happened 33 years ago when my son was born weighing just over a pound, with about a 1% chance to live. Thanks to Jackson, I was at his wedding this past Saturday. We're kicking around some ideas about helping people tell their Jackson stories to a much bigger audience. For now, though, please stay engaged. If you're not already getting our monthly email newsletter, let me know and we'll sign you up. There's no other hospital system in the country like Jackson, and a huge part of what makes it special is it's owned by all of us. We have a chance right now to reclaim it for the next generation and the ones to come after that. And all it's going to require is that we care enough to keep it in the forefront. When I say Jackson is here for you, I mean it. Not the big collective guy across the street you, but for every single one of you in this room. I've been lucky to convince some of the smartest healthcare minds around to come and help us rebuild this place. Give us a chance to earn Jackson's place in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carlos, I just wanted to thank you for your bold leadership of Jackson. This community needs Jackson, and Baptist is not the other hospital in Kendall that's having the trauma. Quantify that.
Don't get
And I
defensive.
also wanted to say that we are standing with Carlos and his team to protect that. Very valuable, because there really is not enough resources and there is not enough people that need that kind of trauma to have one on every corner. So I thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Mel McGuire. I'm with the University of Miami School of Business. That's the disclosure. But I want to go back to so many years ago when I first came to Miami. I was a baby lawyer calling at night, and our senior partner said, "Okay, you have to do this. I'm making you do this. You don't know what you're doing, but you're going to go serve with Jay Weiss on the committee that raised the original money for Jackson Trauma." And I look back on it and think about when Jay did it. I was in charge of the law firm, so that meant I had to go get money from him. It was the best experience of my life. I met everyone in town, and it was a really important committee. And if you're going to do it again, I'll serve with you. I would like to. I'm telling you, it made all the difference in my career working with them. So thank you.
Let me just say one thing about that, Frank. It's important. There will come a time in which we're going to raise money for Jackson. This is not the time to do that. I am personally going to be raising money for the rebuilding of the labor rooms, because I think it's extremely critical to the transformation of Jackson that we get there. Jackson used to, 5 years ago and before, used to deliver 15,000 babies a year. We're down to 4,000 babies. And then predominantly because, as everybody knows, a lot of the times the mothers care more about the aesthetics than necessarily everything else. If you're having a pregnancy at risk, there's no better place to have your child than at Jackson, where the mother is equally well taken care of as the baby. Our NICU, our neonatal intensive care unit, is one of the top in the world. So obviously we're gonna do that. But one thing I've learned is we need to first operationally change the place, show that it's sustainable, show that it can make money, and then go raise the money to do the kinds of things that are necessary. So, and that is the focus we're taking right now, Mel. But thank you very much for that offer.
You know, we talk about getting the message out. We have a lot of our folks who wanted to be here today. The mayor's State of the Union, and also the DBA's got Richard Florida in town. So we're taping this. We're going to put it on our, I'll make sure I get this right, our Facebook and YouTube channel, so that we'll get this out so everyone in the community, I'm just wondering what that all means. So we're going to get that out to our folks who actually do look at that. So, Carlos, we'll get this out. Questions? Yes, Ron.
Carlos, where did you save $500 million in such a short period of time?
Oh, a little here, a little there. Between the labor concessions that we've gotten a little more than half, and we're hoping to get the other half here this week. Well, it's about $100 million. There's another $100 million in staff reductions because this place was just too fat. The rest of the $300 million comes from a lot of smart savings, and George is nodding his head because George banged his head many times against people at Jackson dealing with these kinds of things. But look, procurement alone, there's at least $50 million in savings that we've been able to get. with the University of Miami, this is not even included, that $500 million will be an opportunity for another $40 million in savings. So there's a lot of different work that needs to be done. The budget is $1.8 billion. So when you say $500 million, it sounds like a lot, but it is 23%. You know, I come from a banking perspective. You deal with billions and trillions. It's not the numbers, it's really the percentages that matter. So, and at the end of the day, that's what we're looking. We will, by May 1st, we will have 11% less people than we had a year ago. You know, people, and you know, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I don't look about the fact that we had to reduce 1,000 employees. I look at the fact that we're building a place with 9,000 great people for the future that we're going to be able to build staff again.
Question in the back.
Good morning, Doug Bartel, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Florida, on behalf of our market president, Penny Schaefer, who could not be here today. We too think that collaboration, whether it's with Baptist or Jackson, is the key for the community. You delivered some extraordinary messages this morning. If you would like us to be champions and share your message to the community, what 2 or 3 takeaway points would you like us to share? Because you had some extraordinary facts and figures, but if we're going to help champion in the community for Jackson, what 2 or 3 points would you like us to be talking about, sir?
Well, that's great. The Blues are a great partner for us, and actually one of the things that we've never really had done in the past is have a good, aggressive managed care contracts with the HMOs and the managed care companies, and we're doing that. And that's a big piece that not only is attractive for the HMOs and managed care companies, but equally to bring community doctors in place. The thing that we're making it different, and the thing that to me is basic, it's about the patient experience. You know, we have 10,000 different qualitative initiatives and numbers, and by the way, they're all doing extremely well, but there happens to be infection rates where at one time we were 90 percentile in the country. We're now top 25 percentile, going about top 10%. So at the end of the day, none of that matters. What matters to me, and this is very basic, but that came from my banking career, where First Union went from the worst service to the top service in the country in 5 years. It's about the customer experience. So we are working on that. We are dramatically improved from where we were 9 months ago. So the thing that I want to make sure is that Jackson is not just about the transplant or the trauma center or the burn center. Jackson is there for all healthcare issues, and that we have not only great people, but the place, although it may be old, but now we have painted walls, we have glass in our floors, wax in our floors. Imagine that. It's you know, we have the right place, and we have the right healthcare, and we have the right patient experience. Give us a shot. That's why we started with the doing the physicals for Miami-Dade County, which is ridiculous that somebody else was doing them. But you know, when we're owned by the county, as of last November, December, I think we started doing the physicals. That's a way to get 9,000 to 10,000 people coming through Jackson to get a new experience at Jackson. So all we want to do is just give us a shot. Whether it's Jackson Memorial, north or south, we got a beautiful facility on US 1 and 152nd. That I wouldn't have done, that they spent $120 million on, so now that we got the point, we're writing it, and it's doing very well. So we're excited with it. Thank you.
George, you have a question? Or a comment? Either one.
Not a comment. Carlos, your team, you put a great team together, you've done amazing things, you're cutting costs, you're doing things locally to try to improve the product, bring in revenue. How are you dealing with issues at the federal or state level? Sometimes when you read about what's going on, it's almost like all the things you do, it's like there's this tide coming against you. You know, no matter how much forward progress you do, these federal, you know, Medicaid issues, how are you dealing with that? And what could the community do, if anything, to try to help with those enormous revenue streams that are pretty vital to Jackson's mission?
Not only is your question important, but it's timely. We're doing a lot of stuff locally, but we're also doing a lot of stuff at the federal and state level. Right now, today, as a matter of fact, there is a bill on the floor of the House at the state level, and there's an amendment on the committee in the Senate trying to make sure, I don't know if you saw that in the paper this morning or not, but there's an attempt of deregulating trauma, which means that any hospital will be able to build trauma anywhere in the state, which is not the right way to go about it. But what we're trying to do is amend it so that any hospital that has a level 1 facility can open a level 2 facility within its own satellite business. the Dade delegation, by far the majority of them, have been supportive of what we're trying to do, except for those who work for competitors that are interested in this. But I will tell you that getting out to the Dade delegation and letting them know, sending an email to anyone you know in the Dade delegation and asking to continue their support of us is going to be extremely important for us. That's one piece. The budget is, I don't know if you remember, the governor was trying to cut Medicaid by 35%, which was about $1.6 billion. Jackson alone is 12% of all the Medicaid in the state of Florida. That's how big we are for Medicaid. And part of the reason, it's not that we lose so much for patients, but that's another thing. Again, we used to be 30% indigent, no insurance. We've done it, we are now, according to PW, they're 5-star countrywide or whatever, in identifying people to qualify for Medicaid. That number is now 17% from 30%. That doesn't mean that we have less uninsured people coming in, so we've been able to identify a lot of them to be Medicaid patients, and 35% of our patients are Medicaid. So obviously that would have been a $250 million cut to our $700 million that we received from Medicaid. The House proposal is a 7% cut. That's about $45 million. The original proposal from the Senate was around $88 million. Last I heard, it might be closer to that $45 million. Even though that's, you say, well, you're only getting cut 45 versus 250 million. Well, last year we got cut $110 million. Those are the challenges, Georgia, you're talking about. So yes, we are very, very careful in dealing with that on a daily basis. At the federal level, we've put in applications for 3 different grants of $30 million each to deal with outpatient strategies on how we work with the FQHCs and work with the Medicaid and everything else. We should hear in the early March as to what that looks like. So that's one of the issues. We're also working every day with CMS, both in Medicaid qualification, how to do some of the other fundings, so that we can offset some of the things. The new health care, which people commonly call the Obamacare, for most hospitals would be a negative, for us would be a positive. Because what Obamacare would do is possibly underinsure people, but when you start from zero, in our case, going up is a wonderful thing. For guys like Baptists, it's not so wonderful. So it all depends. If you're looking up or down, then it makes a difference. So those are the challenges, and we're looking to prepare ourselves. Medicaid reform is going to happen at the state level too. All Medicaid in the future will be done by managed care companies. Jackson's done a horrible job in the past of dealing with managed care companies. We're redoing that and preparing ourselves. So there's an awful lot of work as we're working on things that should have been done for the last 20 years. We really are preparing ourselves for the next 5 years as well. So a lot of the challenges at the state and federal level are important to what we're doing right now. So.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah. Damian partnered with Merrill Lynch. I was just wondering, are there any efforts to privatize some of the operations?
No. Let me, and I don't know what you mean by privatize. Let me add a little more to that. The unions have done a really good job ever since Mr. Zapata here chaired a task force about doing a 501c3 of trying to sell it, trying to say that the administration, the county commission, everybody else was trying to sell Jackson. That was never the intent with any of that. But having said that, we're really not looking to privatize it. But we were looking to figure out what makes sense from an outsourcing standpoint. For example, when I got there, they were looking for 2.5 years on outsourcing corrections healthcare. The best bid we got was around $68 million. We will do that operation this year for $36 million or less, probably closer to $30 million. So we would outsource it at a cost of $60 million. Imagine what that would have cost. But by the way, with much better service than we had before. So that's a dramatic improvement. We also were looking to outsource the retail facilities. We're going to do it ourselves at a 3 times the cash flow that we would have gotten from rent from somebody outsourcing. Doesn't mean that we're going to do everything in-house. There's a lot of things, for example, our Medicaid qualification and everything else. We had a company do half our business while we were doing our own internal half our business. We found that they were doing a much better job at a $5 million rate, so we outsourced that to them. And now we've got an improvement of about $12 million a year in between savings and improved collections from that company. So I'm not married to insourcing or outsourcing. I'm married to what's going to give you the best money. So, at the end of the day, I look at everything green with a little S and 2 lines on it, and that's all that matters. So if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it right, financially correct, and at the right quality.
We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Deanne Graham. I'm with Welcome Magazine. We're a tourism guide here in Miami. Is Jackson looking to do anything with medical tourism?
But Jackson does a lot with medical tourism. The good news is that Jackson is very well known in Latin America, and from an ability of healthcare. So we have an extensive. One of the things we just did was partner up. The University of Miami had their own marketing program, and Jackson had their own marketing program. Imagine that, going after the same business. That made no sense. So we are now merged the two of them together, and we're going out and focusing on that, having our great doctors visit many of the doctors in Latin America, which many of them were trained by the UM doctors here in Jackson, and we're working through that environment. We're also doing global pricing that's competitive. That's something, again, that never has been done at Jackson. It used to be, well, UM doctors, you do the pricing, Jackson will do the pricing, and we'll see what happens, and then, we got beat by everybody else. Now we're getting a little more aggressive. So yes, we are very aggressive in it. The good news, it's funny because I was in, with the holidays, Christmas holidays, I was in Colorado, which I always am, but and very wealthy, but as well as that I've known for a long time. We've never, it's always been, hi, how are you, and everything else. He says, what are you doing? I'm running Jackson. He says, Jackson what? Jackson Health says, well, what do you do there? I said, I'm the president and CEO. He says, I need your card. Anybody in my family gets sick, we want to make sure we're taking the Jackson. What happened to it? All of a sudden, I became his best friend. So it shows you what the international and especially Latin American business is for Jackson. So thank you for that.
One last question.
If you could tell us a little bit what you're doing about some of the folks that maybe have the ability to be insured but choose not to be insured, and you look at Jackson as their hospital there, or the place where they go to for.
You have hit a very hot button of mine. We don't have enough time to go through all that, but Jackson's mission is to make sure that we provide health care for people that cannot afford health care, not for the people that choose not to have insurance. The average John Smith gas station owner that chooses not to have insurance, we're not going to do those people for free. So nowadays, as people come to our clinics and come into our environment, we not only are doing a clinical check on them, we're doing a financial check on them to understand if they're poor, at what level of poverty, and whether they qualify for this or not. If they are making enough money, we will maintain them stable. If somebody has a death possibility, we're going to take care of that. But if somebody coming in for something different than that, we will not take care of it unless they go into a payment plan. And that's something that has been very, very different from the past. And some people say that the political pressures for Jackson people to take care of those people. I don't know. I haven't got any. I will tell you that I'm standing very fast to that, and we have turned out many people that making substantial money that choose not to have insurance, and they come in and say we're going to be taken care of for free. If not, we're going to go to Baptist. I said, well, go to Baptist and let them charge you, but I'm not going to do it for free. I'm sorry, that's not what I'm there for. I'm there. The only free health care I'm going to provide is for those people that don't make the income, cannot afford it, and I'll stand by that. So thank you for that.
Okay. Well, Carlos, thank you very much. Today, we really appreciate it. You've been a great partner in your former life and now here, so we really appreciate it. And this is a little something from us. It's not going to help your deficit. I just say one thing before Carlos goes. How important is the work that he does? Well, it is so important to this community. And just anecdotally, before Carlos was here, I participated with a group of sort of business civic leaders saying, well, what should be done about Jackson? I know Representative Zapata, actually some of those meetings were held right here. We were able to sit in on it and say, and at the very time, the very future of Jackson was in question. And I know there was a lot of folks who said, it'll always be here, it's not a problem. I can tell you, I come from a community up north that when I was an elected official, we had a hospital where I was born, as a matter of fact, 125 years old, called Muhlenberg Hospital, served a major, 4 counties in that area. today. They had some of the same issues that Carlos had to deal with when he came in. That hospital today is closed. And literally millions of people that catchment area served now no longer have a hospital. That's how important it is what he's doing for this community. And so we appreciate that very, very much, because it is important to us from a business perspective, but because we also live here. So thank you for all that you do for us. Thank you.